Hi everybody.
Hi.
I know everybody's got sort of stuff about stuff. Anyway, listen. I want to take you on a little journey, right? And it's a bit of a story about how a teeny weeny little island, right, has influenced the world in toast, right? Actually, no, it's not. So there's two kinds of toast that you're familiar with, and I know that this is probably a brown and nuts and seedy eating group. Then there's this one, and I know that you're all well practiced. Right, now, don't hold me responsible. This is my individual and godlike position on the subject. But the truth is, the kind of toasting I come to talk to you about, right, is the very early history of reggae music. With a teeny weeny little bit of toasting mentioned. Now, some people say, it's rap, it's this, it's that. And it's so easy, anybody can do it. Here's a little bird. He's doing it, because it is so bloody easy. Right, we're going to have to go back to the day, back to migration, movements. Jamaicans have always run around. From, I think, 1619, there were early documents of Jamaicans going to America, of all places, to work. They were free men until 1629 or something, when the shit came and thought otherwise. But we're not going to go into that. Fast forward, I think 1865, slavery ended, and then we had, I think, 250,000 Caribbeans were part of the group that built the sewage, the sewage canal. And 90,000 of those were from Jamaica. There was a lot of movement of Jamaicans over the next decades, culminating in the 50s. They went to work in the orange groves. They went to pick oranges and all sorts of stuff. They were kind of like, you know, like what we call the Eastern Europeans who have come over here to pick fruit and veg and stuff. That was back in the days. Now, after that, I mean, there was quite a lot of movement to and from America, and then we kind of, back in Jamaica in the 1930s, as was across Europe and America, there was a huge depression, and Jamaica didn't fare very well. There was terrible riots and distress, horrible, horrible poverty, lots of real nastiness. Not a lot was heard about it, and this chap here, oh God, where did he go? Oh! That chap there, Buster Manty, known as the founder of the nation, he also founded, I don't know why it keeps doing that, because I didn't touch it. He founded the Jamaican Labour Party and also a trade union at that time. In, I think it was, oh look, it's all come back again. It seems to have got corrupted, Tim. By 1944, the British thought, you know what, I've had enough of this. No, look, see, it keeps disappearing.
Hang on, sorry. Let me just see. You keep talking, I will try and...
Okay. Yeah, let's go. Keep going. By 1944, the British had had enough. and thought if they gave Jamaicans universal suffrage, if they gave... No. We're back, we're still back. If they gave Jamaicans the vote, then they'd kind of go away quietly. And strangely enough, it was only the third country in the empire, in the Commonwealth, that had universal suffrage after the UK and New Zealand. Well, it didn't shut them up at all. So then we, moving on to 48, of course, there was the welcome cry. Let's see if this works any better. I'm not very good with this mic. Yeah, the Empire Windrush came, loads of folk. People came here as an invitation because by 52 there was an act passed in America which limited migration of, black migration to double figures. So I think it was actually about 30 per year. They just got really sick of these people coming. You could go and work, but you had to leave. I think one of those people up there could be me, sort of wandering around the streets with my suitcase still. These are amongst the people who came here many, many years ago. I was one of those. I came in 1962. Windrush ended in 1970 or thereabouts. Anyway, so while people were running up and down to Florida and places to pick the grapes, they came across the music, R&B music from these legends, Fats Domino and Louis Jourdan, not to be confused with that film star who was not at all very musical. And they really loved the music, they bought it, they bought up the equipment, and they came back to Jamaica to try and recreate the sound. Sadly, they weren't very good at it. They formed sound systems. One of the first sound systems was this guy, Tom Wong, a Chinese Jamaican, who... He named himself after the great Sebastian, who was a Barnum Bailey figure, a trapeze guy. This guy. Tom the Great Sebastian had a major sound system. You know, he had a bit of money, and you had to have money. Jamaicans didn't have money, so he was quite rare. And he started off with this guy called Count Machuki, who was instrumental in one of the first people to start what we call chatting over the sound system. Before reggae, before rubber dub, before blue beat, before ska, there was mento, there was polka mania, there was revival, which is still very much present in Jamaica today. And of course, people would have known Calypso, and everybody had heard of Harry Belafonte and his Banana Boat song, which we didn't all think was that bloody good. But it suited Americans. I prefer to think of him like that, but it's just me. So now we come to the real sound system guy. There was this guy called Duke Reed, also known as the Trojan, the Enforcer. He was an ex-policeman, and he was like really, really, really well connected. Nobody really messed with Duke Reed. He had a bit of influence, and he had a very big sound system. You can see him there in the bottom right with Fats Domino. And it's interesting because I don't know if you can't see it that well, but in this here, he's actually one of his songs, Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chicken, was a song that was popularised by Louis Jourdan. So, and that was the link. The thing about the sound systems was it was kind of free, and it was free speech, because the radio stations and everything was controlled. It was the only arena that you could actually go and listen to music, dance freely. It was good for the youth, although no self-respecting parent would have allowed their young people to have gone. Coxsone, in reggae history, Sir, as he calls himself, Coxsone, he was called that because he was really good at cricket, and so there was an English cricketer called Coxsone, spelt very differently, so he was named after Coxsone. He was one of the first recorded people is noted to have brought back all this stuff from America and set up his own studio and his own sound systems and things. In the bottom you see Count Machuki. Now Count Machuki, again, is documented as the first person who took up the mic and started to talk to the audience through the music rather than just playing the music. You know, so instead of a disc jockey who just played the music, a disc jockey became somebody who picked up the mic and would say, "What y'all got today? Everybody is here tonight. Love and respect in the ghetto," and this sort of thing. And that I'm sure everybody had heard. And it was a whole new way of doing things. And so DJing was born in a very different style. MCing and DJ now had a totally different meaning to what it had before. Count Machuki had started with Tom Wong and then he jumped ship. But one of the most, I guess, well-known lyrics that people know, because they would have heard it across, because it's played again and again, and the skinheads particularly loved this guy, King Stick. He had a terrible facial disfigurement, but he was one of the first known people to chat on the mic, and he would get in there and he would say, I think I'm a bit behind. "No matter what the people say, this sound lead the way. It's the order of the day from your boss DJ." By King Stick. And you will hear stuff like that repeated. A lot of people have even taken his lyrics and used them. I don't think they were ever intended that. But Jamaicans kept on the tradition where you have a backing track like a sheet music. You would take a sheet music, you'd buy the sheet music, and then you would make your own version. And that is very much the tradition of Jamaican music, where you will hear one tune, but that tune will have 10 different songs by totally different artists performed in a different way. Coxsone Dodd still remains probably the #1 producer out of Jamaica, dearly departed. One of the other people that came out of his studio was King Sporty. King Sporty, known as Noel George Williams, he actually moved to Florida and Miami, and he really spread the word of reggae. He's best known for co-writing Buffalo Soldier with Bob Marley. I mean, naturally, you can't actually talk about Jamaica or reggae music without somebody at some point saying, "Bob Marley, Bob Marley." Bob Marley was very much part of the early ska movement. He was part of a group called the Wailing Souls, and some people said he also called the group the Wailing Wailers, with Peter Tosh, the tall one, and the short one is Bunny Livingston, also known as Bunny Wailer. He says one good thing about music when it hits, you feel no pain. It was a unifying force. Bob Marley probably spread the word of reggae and the message of peace, love and social justice throughout the world, sadly dying quite young. The game changer in sound systems and reggae music was this man, King Tubby. King Tubby was an electronics engineer, a sound engineer, who worked for the big guy, Duke Reid, the enforcer. And Duke Reid would say, just take out the lyrics for me, just take out the lyrics. But he went further and he would bend the guitar and he would put a reverb on the drums and he changed it to what we now know as dub, which is very different to version. So I've got to, just let me try and see there. And out of King Tubby's studio came these guys. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Augustus Pablo, and also Scientist, having sort of spread his reverb and everything all over Jamaica, did set up shop in London, and a lot of British artists would have gone through him. King Tubby, famously known as Osborne Ruddock, and he was called Tubby because his mother's name is Tubman, another very sort of famous name. So this is just to show you, like, the top right there, that is King Stick, no matter what the people say, King Stick, and that is the first pictured sound system with Sir Coxsone Dodd. You see, it's just a great big box. It's just got one speaker in it, and it's probably there'll be an amplifier there somewhere in the background. Duke Reid, the enforcer with his guns and everything, had quite a lot more equipment at the time. And if you have ever been to a reggae dance or listened to reggae music or dub music, Josh Shaka is a British counterpart. Lots of ganja and dub with Josh Shaka. And there were other contenders, of course, who had sound systems, and then they started singing, like Prince Buster. Prince Buster was taken up by skinheads, and in fact, Madness named themselves after one of his hits. Madness, they call it Madness, and a lot of the hits that was popularised by some of the skinhead bands were actually from Buster. Hot on the Trail, or if you like a division, a split, was Rocksteady. A lot of people assume Rocksteady, Trojan Records was Jamaican, but actually it was formed in London. It was formed in 1968 by Chris Blackwell from Island Records. And again, it was, in a sense, a lot of example of the money sort of leaving Jamaica. There's always been a lot of controversy about that. I think that's the earlier Trojan from this guy who's called Lee Gopta. Lee Gopta was an accountant who set up Trojan with Chris Blackwell. These are all the early contenders of, like, if you like, rock steady, which almost had a segue into what we call lovers rock. Marcia and Bob and Marcia, young, gifted and black. I don't think it had anything to do with reggae, but that's just my humble opinion. Now, we had, again, other heavyweight DJs who came about, people like Mr. Ewart, Beckford, also known as U-Roy. U-Roy was a fantastic writer. A lot of people have heard his songs but don't know who he was. He wrote with that song, I'm a Rebel, Soul Rebel. You've heard the song, but he does an amazing chant which he changes depending on who he's doing it for off that. It's very powerful. This guy at the bottom who's trying to be like him is Iroy. He loved him so much that he, took on a similar name. And then we had the guys, again, the sound system DJ Kings, who decided to take on the names of gangsters and stuff because that was much more powerful. Al Capone and Dillinger. But probably one of my favourite would have been, and I'm ending right now, is this guy, U-Roy, who used to dress and look a little bit like my old dad when he used to get dressed up in his pinstripe. It's with Johnny Rotten, though what I've done is I've tried to cover the offending parts. So that was, what's his name? And so, basically, I could go on all night, but I'm not. So we've come to the end of this little lollipop. In England, we have Mad Professor, Channel 1, Jar Shaka, and there are just so many more. In Hastings, we've got, what are they called? Dub Generals. And there's another new sound system on the scene, keeping up the tradition. Bit stuck in the past, not moving on. Reggae has moved to grime. It's moved all the way through. It's got other little splinter bits, but it's all good. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Fabulous, and no mention of toast. Now, at this stage, I throw the Bavard open to the audience. Not literally, but if you have any questions about reggae music or toast or both, then feel free to fire away. Anybody got any questions for Claudine? Fabulous talk. It was very, very, very inspiring. Thank you so much for that. Anybody? Is Eastbourne a big reggae hub? No. Gabby, yes.
Why is U-Roy your favourite?
No, it's not. It was Big Youth.
Big Youth, okay. Why? What is it you like about that one?
He has, I tell you what it is that he has, you can hear me, can't you?
Yeah.
He has a really laid back kind of, he has a really laid back, there is a bit of religion in it. But it's just, I don't know, there's something really laid back about the way he chants, and he chooses a lot of very melodic music to chant over. And the message, of course, and he has a good message. A lot of reggae DJs were dealing in what they call slackness. You have to guess what that is.
When you mentioned earlier, Claudine, about I think 1 tune and 10 versions. Yeah, that reminded me. I don't know if it reminded anybody else of sort of our kind of folk culture with sort of folk music, and then having one song, but you'll get various different versions of that depending on the area of the country that you have. So, are there any kind of? I know it's not folk music, but are there any sort of other equivalents that would apply, any parallels between reggae as your kind of as Jamaica's cultural heritage music genre, if you like, and folk? Anything?
No.
No. I knew there wasn't when I started. Toast.
The comparisons would be about traditions in music, and there's a lot of versions of the different versions will follow different camps, almost like you can imagine there's all the different sound systems, and they have twisted and gone into a different way. So you've got this like very sort of sweet singing lovers rock kind of stuff. What do I mean by lovers? Does anybody know what I mean by lovers? Again, it's very melodic, appealing, more sort of appealing music. I'm trying to think of a song. I can't sing, so no. Can I ask just to go home and ask Mr. Google? But such artists like Beres Hammond, I would really recommend that you put that on your homework list. And then there will be another kind of segue of more traditional reggae, kind of in the vibe of the Polka Mania. So there's like one song, I just remember it's about what the young girl wants, and you got Roy singing on the top. Young girl don't want soldiering, the young girl don't want soldiering. And then on the bottom, you've got a sweet young female voice singing, "Ha soldiering, Baba, soldiering what the young girl wants, what the young girl wants." And then he's saying, "She don't want her." No. Anyway, I like I say, I can't sing too well, but it's that sort of, it's not quite call and response. It's like almost two different songs that marry what they now call, what do they call it?
Mash-up.
Mash-up! It's now what they call a mash-up. And mash-ups is very much the essence. I hate this thing.
So, yeah, the mics aren't great.
Yeah, mash-up is the essence of sound system, DJ, MC, chit-chat, chanting, spitting, rapping.
There you go. Eastbourne, you heard it here at the Bavard Bar. This is going to be, Eastbourne's going to change, isn't it now? Come March, it's going to be wild. Any more questions for Claudine? Yes, question, David.
Yeah, the whole red, green, and gold Rastafarian ganja Haile Selassie thing. When did that originate, and how influential was that in the sort of good time sound system reggae as well?
Well, have you heard of Marcus Garvey? Okay. I mean, reggae is Rastafari is a relatively young religion, and there's arguments about where it has its roots. We do know that a lot of slaves escaped the British. Jamaica has been a pain in the arse to the British forever. You got slaves who ran off into the hills and lived there as free people for hundreds of years, right? Then you had all this rioting and stuff. In the meantime, beginning of the last century was when the philosophy, if you like, was coined, and it was about living in, I quote, a socialistic kind of way. There was a belief that the ganja would help, spiritual thinking. And also people like Marcus Garvey had said, look to Africa where a black king black man will be crowned. And there comes Haile Selassie, and that was, if you like, Haile Selassie became the figurehead, having a line to the throne of David. Yeah? Rastas were mercilessly persecuted in Jamaica, and having locks and stuff was seen as a disgusting thing. But the worst thing was the ganja smoking, which was illegal. And I think in '66, Selassie came to Jamaica, and crowds of people, crowds of Rastas came out to see him. I remember 99, 2000 when I was in Jamaica with my locks, I actually ended up putting extensions on just to stop people from harassing me. It still wasn't that wonderful then. There was still some persecution. That may not be a popular view, but what you must understand, just like is that racism, homophobia, sexism is a powerful thing. So much so that women, gays, blacks believe themselves to be inferior and perpetrate the work of the oppressor. Irie-irie-ites, etc. You know, it was a very powerful thing. So yes, of course people thought, oh no, I don't want to be like them. But it's grown, people like Bob Marley has really taken that message, because the fundamental message is peace, love and social justice. There are lots of aspects of reggae music where they have what we call fashion dread, right? And there's all sorts of dreads that deal with slackness, which has got nothing to do with those messages. But the message, fundamental message of Rastafari of peace, love and social justice has spread through the world, along with the ganja smoking.
Well, there we go.
And in 10 years' time, things will be different, because we've already seen what's happening with marijuana around the world now, or cannabis, or whatever you want to call it.
Fabulous. Well, look, just because of time, I'm going to have to cut it there. But can we thank, please, Claudine and her fabulous Bavard.